this suddenly started happening to you at a very young age. Could you talk us through your whole experience?
I started wetting the bed at the age of 8. Then my parents thought maybe she's having some nightmare, maybe some psychological, pressure. Going to the loo, drinking water, losing weight, they knew something was wrong. They were trying to find a solution and there was no solution. When I used to go to the washroom, my father came to the conclusion that when Nupur goes to the loo, black ants come near the WC. So he assumed that black ants means sugar.
Yeah.
Sugar in the urine means diabetes. My body randomly one day just stopped making that insulin, There is something called beta cells which is there in our pancreas and my beta cells randomly decided to go on a strike. People say diabetes. They just know that one word, diabetes. Right. And it's nobody's fault.
Can this be cured ever or it's a lifelong medication?
No one is in charge of our body. I used to for the longest time think that doctor will take care. It's not that, it's me. In the modern world, sugar is the new cocaine, right? Life is worth living if you're healthy and happy.
Why India is so diabetic and not a country like America?
Every family gathering that you go to, muh meetha karo, people will say, thoda le lo, kya hota hai? We need to rethink that, right? We have to think about our health first. Recently, there was a study done by the Indian Council of Medical Research. 101 million Indians have diabetes. 136 million are pre-diabetic. These are huge numbers.
It's not a joke anymore.
It's not a joke anymore.
Namaste and welcome to this episode of the Oddcast Show. Today we will be talking about the odd disease of diabetes. To discuss this, we are joined by Nupur Lalvani ji, who herself was diagnosed with the dreaded condition of diabetes at the age of 8. She has not only battled it on her own, but she has also founded an NGO called the Blue Circle Society that has been consisting of advocacy and treatment for diabetic patients. So please join me in welcoming Nupur Lalvani ji to the show. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
Thank you, Suvay. Thank you, Kunal. It's wonderful to be here. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay. So to start us off, please tell me as a layman, what exactly is diabetes? What are the types? And what are the treatments for it?
Yes. Thank you for starting from the start. I think it's very important because many of us, colloquially, we understand the word diabetes. If not, we understand the word sugar. Because people say, I have sugar, which is like a, word that they use to understand that they have diabetes. So diabetes is a condition where your body has excess of glucose in the blood. And that is not normal. There is supposed to be a certain threshold. And when it goes beyond that threshold, you have diabetes. Now, there are multiple types of diabetes. So that, the simple word diabetes starts becoming more and more complex because there are so many types. What I have is called type 1 diabetes, and that is an autoimmune condition. I can talk about that in a minute. The other type, which is most common, is called type 2 diabetes. When people, they say that mujhe sugar hai or mere nani ko diabetes hai, or that most commonly known word is type 2 diabetes. Type 2 it happens because of many reasons. So one could be genetics. If somebody in your family has it, you may be at risk. The other reason could be also lifestyle. Nowadays, we lead a very sedentary life. We're ordering online, we're eating outside food, we're eating a lot of ultra processed food, packet food. All that adds up, your weight goes up and you're more susceptible to type 2 diabetes. Then there is also something called gestational diabetes, which women develop during pregnancy. So not every woman will have it, but some women will get gestational diabetes, and usually this goes off after the baby is born. But in many cases, what happens is because the lifestyle of the person changes, she's burdened with a lot of new things, she eventually develops type 2 later in her life. So that's the third type we spoke about. And I'll talk about two more very quickly. One is called LADA, which is latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, which basically is the same thing as type 1 diabetes, except that it happens in adulthood. Type 1 also used to be called juvenile diabetes. So when I was diagnosed, it was called juvenile diabetes.
Right.
Now we understand that it can happen at any age. Then the final type of diabetes, and there are many subtypes in this, it's called MODY, which is maturity onset diabetes of the young, which is another type with various subtypes. So it is a pretty complex condition, and it's important for people to know what type they have.
Okay. What are the treatments like?
Yes. So for me, as somebody who has type 1 diabetes, I need to inject insulin externally, and I've kept my, syringe right here to show your viewers. So this is a syringe. This is probably everyone has seen it. And this is insulin. So basically the insulin, that your body is making naturally, my body randomly one day just stopped making that insulin, my pancreas. So there is something called beta cells, which is there in our pancreas. And my beta cells randomly decided to go on a strike. That is the, sort of light-hearted way that I explain it. And why it happened, we don't know. The reason for type 1 diabetes or any autoimmune disease is not known to the best of scientists and to the best of doctors. So I got it, like many other people have it. And for me, since my body doesn't make insulin, and insulin is important for living, without insulin, I will die. I simply need to take this. That's it. Like, we get up and brush in the morning. Same way, I have to get up. I have to test my sugar. In fact, you saw me checking my sugar some time back. So it's a normal part of my life. And for type 1 diabetics, there is no alternative except insulin. I also want to, maybe when we speak about misinformation, I'll talk more about that. For type 2, the treatment there can be various types of treatments. So it depends. For type 2, your doctor may put you on oral medication, some kind of tablets, metformin, some common medication that a lot of people are put on. Or your doctor may also give you a few months to correct your lifestyle. And if in that duration you're not able to, things are not improving, then they may put you on oral medication. After many years, if the problem continues and if, the blood sugars are going extremely high, some people with type 2 diabetes also require insulin injections like type 1 diabetics require. So that's the broad treatment for diabetes.
Okay. Also, you mentioned that this suddenly started happening to you at a very young age. Could you talk us through your whole experience in that part?
Yeah. So I was 8 years old when I got diagnosed with diabetes, and usually you don't tend to think that a child is going to get something like diabetes, right? It sounds like something that
it's
old
very
people.
Odd. Yeah,
it's very odd, exactly. And it sounds like something that old people get. I mean. So it was very shocking and surprising, and actually our family never really thought that I had diabetes. My parents are not doctors, but despite that, I was lucky to be diagnosed because a lot of people don't even get a diagnosis. I want to quickly take this opportunity also to mention that 3 years back, in Pune itself, there's a young boy. He was the same age as me. He was 8 years old, and it was COVID time, as 3 years ago. So his parents, they noticed the same symptoms that I had, and the symptoms are weight loss, urination, excessive water, excessive hunger, fatigue, and these are very important, to notice. Because when you're going through it, you'll certainly notice if you're going to the washroom 10 times. So this boy went through the same thing. It was COVID time. They couldn't go to see the doctor. They asked the doctor. They said, these are the symptoms. Basically, long story short, that 8-year-old boy passed away.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's really sad because almost 30 years back when I got diabetes, I had also an experience which was not very pleasant. My diagnosis didn't happen in a straightforward way. It was only because my parents pushed. My father pushed. That's how we got to know that I have diabetes. But I feel very sad because, and I'm very happy that, you called me to talk about this because people need to know.
Exactly.
And if they don't know, they are going to lose someone dear to them. Just imagine the parents, a single child, one 8-year-old boy in a city like Pune. We are not talking about a village or something, So these were my symptoms where I had all these symptoms, but we didn't know that I have diabetes. I was eating, my father would eat 3 rotis, 4 rotis. I would eat 6 rotis, and
At the age of 8.
at the age of 8, yeah. And initially it was, I think my parents were happy that, okay, badta bacha, let her eat and that sort of thing. So they were quite happy that I was eating, healthily, but I was losing weight, I was fairly normal, like, I had chubby cheeks and whatever. And all of that was, it was like the body was melting almost.
Right.
So initially my parents thought, okay, maybe she's playing a lot, 4 hours she's going and running, or she's cycling, or something must be going on. Let's not worry.
Yeah.
But the problem, kept increasing. I was losing more weight. We once went on a family outing, and we were in a small bus with the extended family. And every 5 minutes, I had to tell my mother, stop the bus. I want to go to the loo. And I was a very shy child.
What was your water intake like at that time?
It was a lot. I was drinking a lot of water, and my parents were happy because, drinking water, good thing.
Yes.
So they were like, okay, great. You're doing great. Just continue. But then just going to the loo, drinking water, losing weight, they knew something was wrong.
Right.
Initially, they thought maybe it's, some worms in the stomach, some children must have eaten something or something. We did all of those things. I started wetting the bed at the age of 8. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say this because my saying this could help your viewers, notice the symptoms in their child maybe or their family member. It could save their life.
Right.
I was wetting the bed at 8 years of age. It's not normal, right? We stopped wetting the bed when we were 2, 3, 5. Then my parents thought maybe she's having some nightmare, maybe some psychological, pressure or something. There was no pressure really, but they were trying to find a solution and there was no solution. When I used to go to the washroom, my father came to the conclusion that when Nupur goes to the loo, black ants come near the WC.
Okay.
He was able to identify that it's not anyone else, it's me. And so he assumed that black ants means sugar.
Yeah.
Sugar in the urine means diabetes. And mind you, my parents are not doctors. I mean, they're educated, they're everything, but they're not doctors. So my father diagnosed me actually. And then, he said to somebody he knows that, he said to a doctor that maybe she's got diabetes, we are worried about her. So they said, no, it's not possible. Children ko nahi hota hai diabetes, you don't worry about it.
Right.
But my parents were worried. And so they took me to a pathology lab nearby and we tested and the pathology lab said, there's nothing, don't worry. No, something's wrong, and even at that point, my parents could have said, okay, fine, no issues. We would have gone home, I would have probably died. But they didn't accept it, and I think that's very important. Again, like I want to highlight this to your viewers. There will be times in your life where somebody will tell you, no, it's not, it's not true. Don't worry. It's not just you're imagining this problem. But if you feel that there is something wrong, just go and check. Like, that's it. That is the summary of everything that I want to tell you in like one sentence. We checked. My father got quite angry at the pathology lab. We checked again. My sugar at that time was 636. A normal person's sugar should be about 100 roughly. I mean, sugar is a spectrum. It can be 100, it can be 140, it can be, different things. But mine was extremely high. Okay. Suddenly everything fell into place, We went to, got admitted in the hospital and I was there for a couple of days. Finally they said that you have juvenile diabetes. And at that time it was not called type 1. So that was how I got diagnosed. I'm very lucky to be alive and I do feel that I am here, I have this chance, I got to live. Nobody else should die because of this kind of, not knowing what it is.
Right. Okay. And I also have a question regarding certain lifestyle practices that people have, since you spoke about it's the ease of ordering food nowadays. One thing is that India is known to be the diabetic capital of the world with, I don't know the exact number, but I think 80 million cases. The question is that why India and why not a country like America? Because when I was in America, their lifestyle is very different from what we follow over here. Because in America, they do certain practices like they eat dinner very early.
Yeah.
They are a very fast food driven culture. Their gas stations have so much fast food of brands that I've never even heard of in my life, despite being a Gen Z.
Yeah.
So, why India is so diabetic and not a country like America?
Yeah, I mean that's great, and I'm so happy that we are discussing this, and it's a really interesting combination here, right? It's you, it's your dad, it's me. It's all generations that are covered in this podcast, and well. To be fair, America has its fair share of diabetics.
Yeah.
However, you're right. There is a problem in India. There's something is wrong.
Yeah.
Why it's wrong, what's going wrong, best scientists, best doctors, I mean, you name it, any of those best names, nobody has a clear-cut answer. But everyone acknowledges that there's something wrong. You're right, 80 million. And recently there was a study done by the Indian Council of Medical Research where they came up with these numbers that 101 million Indians have diabetes, all types of diabetes, 101 million, 136 million are pre-diabetic. And when you asked about the types, I think I should have mentioned, but I'll mention now. There's also something called pre-diabetes, wherein before you develop type 2 diabetes, there's a small window where you are able to rectify, possibly through lifestyle interventions. So that is eating healthy, exercising. Lot of Indians, we know this very well. Lot of Indians have fat on the torso area.
Yeah.
Right. So that is another reason. The excessive fat which comes over your internal organs, that is also something that causes an issue. So why do we have so many diabetics? I mean, could be partly genetic. We are predisposed to, there are many scientific studies that have been done by the brightest minds over last so many years, which show that if you compare a Caucasian and if you compare a South Asian like us, like Indians, with the same body weight and the same BMI, the Indian, even though he may seem thinner, has more likelihood of getting diabetes.
But why?
Yeah. So I think some things are there, and I'm not a doctor or a scientist. I'm just somebody who has diabetes myself, but we've been dealt some card, right? And I think the way I look at it is, now I got diabetes already. Mine is autoimmune type 1, whatever, but I have it.
Yeah.
Now, what am I going to do here on to make sure that, I have a healthy life, I have a happy life, and I can, live to be 100 years old or how much ever I want to, live happily. In the case of type 2, there is a prevention angle. And, I want to sort of talk about that since you brought it up. What can people do, to make sure that they don't develop type 2? A lot of people say that my parents had diabetes or my grandparents have diabetes. So, I will get it. There's no option for me. I'm doomed. But I think I'm just wanting to remind those people that you're not doomed. You can turn around your life. It's not necessary that if someone, your parents or grandparents have it, that you will also have it. You take charge of your health. You take ownership of your health. You cut out junk food. You cut out, ultra processed food, anything that comes out of a packet. Don't have that. We live in the modern world, a fast world. We want all the benefits. So these are the negative parts that come along. And nobody's perfect, but you have to make a choice daily. It's like working on a relationship, right? Or it's like maintaining your friendship. You have to work on it daily. If you don't work on it daily, you don't have a friend anymore.
Right.
It's the same thing with your body. And I think you should be friends first with your own self, with your own body, because that body is going to last you till your last day. So, really important to prevent type 2 diabetes as far as possible.
Right. Okay. I have a question that is a little bit off diabetes. It's regarding medical conditions in general. My friend got this to my attention recently. It's a very interesting point that nobody really thinks about, I'll say, that whenever somebody has some sort of innate issue, like I have a severe allergy problem, every time the weather changes, my health goes for a toss. Mostly people say, oh, that Sued must have just been born with it.
Yeah.
But do you see some scientific aspect as to why people are born with certain things? Because that's where the argument ends. He's born with it.
Yeah.
But do you have any scientific answer as to why people are born with certain diseases, and what is the solution?
Yeah. I hate to say that I don't know. But the fact is that In my case, I got type 1 diabetes when I was 8.
Yeah.
So I wasn't born with it. I was a so-called normal child. And then suddenly, like, how do you say, what is the opposite of normal? I guess I became a little abnormal, right? Because when you go to school, when you're going down to play, everything is different. Like you get diabetes, your life changes 360 degrees. And I know you said this is not only about diabetes, but why do we get it? It's probably a combination of your genetics. You got the bad kind of lottery that you won. I think it's for us as a layman, it's a matter of perspective. I've had a good life, a healthy life. I've run marathons. I've done 100 kilometers on foot. And I don't question, right? Why me? Why was I that person that climbed a mountain? Why did I do 100 kilometers? But when I get something bad happens to me, when I develop a condition, then I feel like, oh God, why me? It could have happened to anyone else.
Yeah.
So I think it makes you, it matures you faster, right? Like you do realize, I think at a pretty young age, I was like, okay, fine. I made my peace with it. I said, I got it now. It's fine. And the doctors have told my family that don't try, random, these, how do you say, nuske. It's not going to go. If you stop her insulin, she won't survive. So you have to, I think acceptance is a large part of having some condition. You have an allergy, you know it.
Yes.
And you are taking some steps to make sure that you are healthy and that you are not suffering with that allergy. Perhaps, you'll have an air filter in your room. Maybe you will sit in the AC. Maybe you'll make yourself comfortable. So I think sometimes what happens is we get stuck in that whole thing of why me? How can I reverse this problem? And it's very important to think that, because as a human being, we are not on earth just to, come live our life and die. We have to think about it. So it's good to think, but I think it's also very important to accept and to move on and to live your life in the best possible way. Like, you are, and like, all of us are trying to live our life, in a good way.
So I have a lot of questions here. The first one is that once, let's say, a person is diagnosed with this condition of diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2. Can this be cured ever, or it's a lifelong medication?
Yeah. So type 1 is a lifelong thing. There is no cure so far. And I want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the misinformation around type 1, because people say diabetes. They just know that one word, diabetes. Right. And it's nobody's fault. Till the time I didn't get it, even we just knew the word diabetes. We didn't know anything else.
Neither do we. That's why we're,
yes.
Talking about it.
Yes. And I really want to thank you for, bringing this up, because, 100 million people, 136 million, these are huge numbers.
It's not a joke anymore.
It's not a joke anymore. Type 1 is not curable. Most people, they, especially when the child gets it, parents are shattered. They want to do something. They want their child's pain to go away. Every parent, it's nothing new, including my own, they went through that phase. If I got it, like the parent would say that if I got this problem, it's fine, but take it away from my child, let me have it.
Right.
But the reality of the matter is that this has happened. The person now has it. Type 1 is not going to get cured. And there are many, there are some babas, there are people that will say, you have this churan, you have this one, you have that one. It's not going to go. And it's a very simple thing. By seeing me, you'll never know that I have diabetes, right? Unless I tell you. And it's just a simple thing. My body does not make insulin. I have to take it from outside. That's it with type 1 diabetes. The faster one accepts it, the better. So type 2 is basically preventable to a large extent because, there's a combination of many factors going on. There's lifestyle. A lot of us nowadays, because of the sedentary life, we are overweight. We need to lose that extra weight, and a lot of the problem gets, stopped right there. When you lose that extra weight, or when you lose the tummy weight, is when, your likelihood of developing type 2 diabetes will reduce. So that is something that people can actively do, because a lot of the times we feel that, life is just happening to me and what I don't have any control, but we do have control. We can take steps. We can eat healthy. We won't be perfect, but we can try,
What's the economics behind this? Like, let's say a person is diagnosed with this condition at whatever age, and as I understand, this condition can come up at any age, right?
Yeah.
So at a bare minimum, what would a person who is diagnosed with this condition need to spend as a treatment on a monthly basis? Like, can you give us a ballpark?
Yeah. So,
what do you spend versus, what's the average?
So on the lower end, at least 5,000 rupees, for somebody who requires insulin, glucose strips, other things to manage. And this is a very conservative estimate. Surely, there are other factors because you need to go to the doctor. That is also an expenditure. You need to do your annual tests, your 3-monthly tests. You need to travel to the doctor. Everything adds up. So it ends up becoming quite a lot.
And the 5,000 you mentioned is per
is per month.
Per month.
Yes,
right.
yes. And I'm talking at this point about type 1 diabetes because, or, somebody who's insulin dependent diabetic. For me, about, around 8 to 10,000 is my monthly expenditure. And I'm pretty, old school with the syringes. And there are 3 modes of taking insulin. One is a syringe, which is really old school. There's also an insulin pen, which is slightly, newer and also a little bit more costly. And then there's something called an insulin pump, which is a device that you wear on your body, and it you have to tell it to give you a certain amount of insulin. It gives you. I've also used an insulin pump for several years, and these things are extremely expensive. They're out of reach for the common man. Most people in India are probably using syringes or pens. Very small percentage of people are using pumps. For those that use pumps, even in pumps there are various types, the higher end models with the CGMs and everything. You could have a monthly expenditure of up to 35,000 easily. And this is just for a person who doesn't have any extra complications. Or many people who have diabetes for long term, they develop complications, kidney issue, eyes, retinopathy, nephropathy, neuropathy, a lot of problems, heart issues. People get heart attacks at young age. So then the cost keeps going up, so it's extremely costly and something needs to be done about this.
By something needs to be done about this, what do you mean? Do you want the government? What are the expectations of a person who is diagnosed with this condition? Do they want the government to step in and subsidize this? Are there ways that our government has acted on this so far? What and what's the pharma industry doing?
Yeah.
Where are we on that?
Yeah. So, like in most developed countries, take a look at most countries in Europe, for example, have a system of universal health coverage where, if you have any disease, whether it's diabetes or it's, anything, the government is going to make sure that you get your medication, and it should not be any financial burden on the person who has it.
The state exchequer is bearing all the costs.
Yeah, the state exchequer is bearing the cost. Now, we have to be a bit realistic and keep in mind that those are rich countries, and
with lesser populations.
With lesser population, and we are a massive country, and we are a low and middle income country. So those things one has to keep in mind. But the fact is that everybody, irrespective of their socio-economic background, should have access to good health and a good system of care wherever they come from. It should not be that because I can't afford it, I just die. And we are supporting people who are not able to afford. There's a example of one family. There's a auto rickshaw driver. And this is the beauty of of reaching out to people online. So one auto rickshaw driver in Mumbai had a passenger, and he was telling her about some conversation came up, and he was telling her about his daughter who has diabetes. So that lady, I'm very grateful to her. I don't even remember her name now. She reached out to us. We are all strangers to each other. Nobody knows each other. She found us online. She reached out to us on Facebook and she said, please help this person. So, we did our background checking. We did all of that. We realized there's a real problem here. The father is an auto driver. There are 3 girls, 3 daughters, and mother is a housewife. One of the daughters, the middle one, has type 1 diabetes. And she was in a bad shape, because it's not just about the money and the medication, not just about access to that, but
it affects
also
your mental health also.
Mental health also, access to knowledge also, and that's missing, So the economic burden is huge, and government needs to be doing something. Government is doing some things. One of the good things that our government has been doing for several years now is there is something called the Jan Aushadhi Kendra, which is basically chemist. But these are government-run chemists. And if I'm not wrong, there are about 8 to 10,000 of these across India. If you do a simple Google search, even for your area, or in Pune city, if we do a search, we'll find, the ones which are near us. Now, what is the speciality of this is that generic medicines are sold there and they are 50 to 90% cheaper than the branded medications which are available in the market, which are made by the big companies, the pharma companies. So there is some relief that the patient can have, and I tried out one of these things couple of years back because I thought that, well, firstly, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. I have my own lived experience, and maybe if I try it out, and I share my experience with our community. We have a fairly large network of diabetics, over 1 lakh diabetics across India. And so me and a friend of mine, we tried out these generic insulins, and we wrote a blog about it. And this was, I think, 3-4 years back, and we made videos about it. And we told people that this is what we are doing. We are in no way advising you medically, but this is our experience.
There is a cheap option available which is provided by our government.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Is what we are saying. So,
right.
Explore that option if you want to.
But what about the medical fraternity? Are they pro this or are they against it?
I think most of the medical fraternity are against it. Now, what the reason is, is your guess is as good as mine. I know there's a lot of conversation around why this happens, and is it that, what benefit to the doctor if they are recommending a branded medicine. We can make our best guesses here, and I don't. The short answer is I don't really know. Sometimes it could be a combination of, is there something in it for them? That big question mark that comes in the mind. There's also the question of, is there enough scientific literature to prove that generics are truly safe? Because when I switch to
because they have the same formulations, right? So
Correct.
They should be equally effective.
Correct. And I remember this when, I casually asked one of my doctor friends, I said, when I'm planning to move to generics, what do you think? I wasn't in a consultation, formal consultation, but I asked them this and they said, no, don't do it. I said, why? And they said, no, it's not good. It's not as good. So when I switched, I took that risk on my own. I was like, okay, I'm an informed patient.
How did it go?
It has been fine. My sugars I've been tracking, I use a glucometer. I also use something called a continuous glucose monitor, which you can see here on my arm.
Right.
It's a small coin-sized device.
And all these things that you procure from the Jan Aushadhi Kendra, which is a subsidized form of, giving you effective, lower cost treatment, has been effective for you.
It's been effective for me, yes. My personal experience is that it's been effective.
Which makes me wonder, and I wonder if you, as a person who's suffering from this condition, wonders this, that don't you find it odd that when COVID hit us, within a year and a half, we had a vaccine ready for it. But here in diabetes, there is no cure. And where we are heading is what I understand from what you've said so far is that there are a lot of enhancements in the type of medication that's been given, the ways in which you can take it. There are pumps, there are syringes, there are, different ways of taking it. And these things are getting more and more expensive as we progress in terms of tech and in terms of innovation in administering the insulin. So while we are having that, there is still no cure for it. And whereas we had COVID, which broke out, and within 15 months, we had a cure for it. So the question I'm trying to get at over here is that, is the money in the medication or is the money in the cure? Or I would simply say that, because the money is in the medication, there is no cure.
Yeah.
Well, what are your thoughts on that?
I think these are really valid concerns. And for us as diabetics, trust me, you're absolutely right. This is in our mind all the time. It's definitely the amount of money that we spend on this, it's phenomenal.
It's draining.
It's really draining. And for an average middle class family, and now these things, the generic medicines, where does one get glucometer strips which are cheap and yet reliable? There is no information available about this. This is why our NGO, our community, we put out this information that these are our experiences. We have nothing to gain. We're not a company. We're not getting money out of this, right? So we are sharing this with people so that they can also save a little bit of money. To your point about, COVID, and it's really frustrating because diabetes is one among umbrella of diseases called NCDs, non-communicable diseases. So, diabetes, cancer, neurological conditions like stroke, mental health conditions, whether it's bipolar or anything, or any of these other things like, are NCDs, right? And I think maybe if we go back like 50 or 100 years back, what were governments doing to help the citizens and what are they doing now? I think that it's like a big ship, like the government is like or governments or international bodies, they are like massive organizations, and for them to change and to get get into the groove seems like it's taking them longer than, and I think that's expected, because with infectious diseases you either control it very quickly or your population dies. So that urgency has caused them to certainly, make that vaccine, and we all have taken it, and, that sort of thing. But there is a certain, how do I say, it's not an as urgent matter if someone has diabetes.
It's not a priority for them.
It's not a priority. And that is something that we are trying to change. We're trying to speak to governments. We're trying to tell them that this is very important, because today if a citizen of your country has diabetes and he or she is not able to afford simple metformin or any other medication which he is supposed to take, 20 years down the line, that man or woman, maybe his leg gets cut, amputation. We may have seen people in our, daily life, we may know someone who has had a toe cut off or a leg cut off or gone blind because of diabetes. So that person is then again, going to be a drain on the state, on the government itself. So it's better that you invest in your people right now, because something has to be done. The problem is there, and India is, unfortunately, we are a leader in this, second, I think only to China, but we have a huge number of people, and those people, it's a combination of factors. It's lack of money, it's lack of knowledge, lack of right information, rampant misinformation due to social media. Information is there, but even misinformation is equally there. So it's something that needs a whole of society approach. It's not just the government's job. That's why, us as patient advocates, as civil society, as, all of us as normal people, we also need to pitch in and step in and tell our governments that this is what needs to be there, because the problem is not going away.
Right. So I understand that your NGO that you started is working towards three things. One is awareness, creating awareness about what is diabetes, how do you detect it, how do you solve it, or in the sense, how do you live with it?
Correct.
Because there is no cure for it. The second thing that you're doing is advocacy for changing policies and for trying to, get better affordable treatment.
Yeah.
And the third thing is that you also have an online helpline where, it's a 24-hour helpline where people can come and talk to you all about and get advice from people who are suffering with this condition, right?
Yes.
So can you just talk us about, why you started this NGO and, what's the next goal in the NGO? Like, what have you achieved so far?
Yes. So I think I would say I had a pretty smooth journey with diabetes, in the sense that it has its ups and downs, it's not a cakewalk. But I didn't realize that there are people in the same city, in the same, who are facing extreme form of problems, whether those problems are financial or they are problems which are more social in nature, in the sense that, another one of the things that we do, and you might find this, your viewers might find this funny, but we help people with diabetes to also get married. A lot of people would approach
There are social taboos associated with diabetes.
There are social taboos. There's a lot of stigma about it.
Give us a few examples.
So, people are not able to find a partner. And the Indian system is such that there is an arranged marriage market, and people are, very much transactional about a lot of things, that it's almost like that.
I mean, everyone wants every partner to be in good health.
Good health and perfect.
Right.
And if you have diabetes, then you're a defective piece in a way, So it didn't, that was not, it didn't even occur to me that this is a problem. But the fact is that the problem is there. Whether I close my eyes or I open it and acknowledge it, that yes, problem is there. So we do have a system where people can come and introduce themselves, find a partner. And we've had people within our community getting married,
Through your NGO.
Through our NGO.
Wow.
So it's not just the money part of it. If someone doesn't have money to buy insulin, yes, we do support them, we do help them. But we realize that we are not trying to be the government. I don't want to, be that person that is giving free medicine to everyone. I want to be that person that made a small change in the way the government thinks, and the government should support the people, because that's their job. The government has many things, and it's our job to remind them that, we also exist, and we are a huge population of diabetics, and something needs to be done. So financial is one, social problems are other. There's a lot of stigma about diabetes. Even when people go to school, a young child gets diabetes and goes to school, many times the parents are hiding it. And whether you hide or you say openly, that's your personal wish. But it should not be a burden on you. It should not be that, I am forced to hide it, or I'm not supposed to tell my friends, or in fact, we encourage people to tell the schools to talk about it, because tomorrow if your child has an emergency and he or she falls down, God forbid, somebody should know how to take care. Somebody should know that the child has diabetes, let me feed her some sugar or some glucose. Now I'm sitting with you, and I'm sitting here with some glucose. So in case I feel my sugar going low, or in case I feel my sensor tells me, I'll quickly eat it. So this is our daily life. It's a normal life like anyone else. We just have to take a little extra care. And this is one of the problems that is prevalent in our society, that, there's a lot of stigma about it.
Really? So as far as normalcy is concerned, like you mentioned that, you're leading a normal life. Are you able to do all sorts of physical activities? Like you mentioned that, you're running marathons, you're also done a 100-kilometer walkathon.
Yeah.
I understand there is a purpose behind this to try and create awareness, is that's why you did this. But can a normal diabetic, can he or she lead an active life in terms of sport, etc.? Can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's really nice that we're talking about it. I want to share a story quickly of this was a couple of years back, 5-6 years ago, young boy, I think 6-7-year-old, and newly diagnosed. And that boy is a state level champion of skating. And now he got type 1 diabetes, so the family is broken down. It's like really, people are upset, and we have to give them time. It takes time to accept. The parents, they pulled the child out of the skating practice, and they told us that, that's it, we're done. Now, no need for him to do skating. And we said, why? There are people that have done phenomenal things with having diabetes, and you can be a prime minister of country. The UK Prime Minister Theresa May, previous Prime Minister, she has type 1 diabetes. You can you can run 100 kilometers. You can go scuba diving. You can be skating. You can be a world class Olympian. There are Olympians also who have type 1 diabetes. So don't. It needs extra care, no doubt about it. You need to be careful. You need to check your sugar before and after. You need to make sure everything's going fine. And what I would suggest to people is to, do what you enjoy. I like running. I love running. I've been doing marathons for years. And I think for us as a family, it started because my father, is a runner, and an amateur runner. But and it was just that. It was just that, oh, my dad's running. Why not me? And so when I said to, my parents earlier, like long back, this was right at the beginning of the Mumbai Marathon, like 20 years back or whenever it started, that, we did it as a family. So initially we were young, and my sister and my mother and me, we would do the dream run. So that, that started there. And then slowly, I said, chalo, let me push the barriers a little bit, 10K, then 21K, then 42K and 42 kilometers, people, sometimes they look at me and
normally people can't do it.
Yeah, the people are like, we won't even go by car 42 kilometers, you're mad, you're going running. But I enjoy it, and I'm not doing it because somebody told me. In fact, I have to tell you this, the first time I wanted to run 42 kilometers, I spoke to and I'm not complaining in any way, I spoke to a well-meaning doctor, and he's a good friend. And I said, I want to do 42 kilometers, because I like it. I want to do it. And he said, why do you want to do it? What is the need for it? And I didn't listen to him. I went and did it anyway. That was the first time I did it. And I've done several, of those marathons since then. And I'm glad at that point I didn't listen, because you can do what you want to do. And I'm not anything special, If I can do it, anyone else can do it. You
are special because, despite having the condition, you're doing this. That's odd, that's special, that's great. And, you can become an inspiration to millions, I think.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. But I mean, now I see so many people that have diabetes and are doing incredible things. And really, kudos to them and kudos to their support system, their families, their friends who are, supporting them, encouraging them. My family, my parents, my sister would stand on the road, with juice and with, this thing that, oh, if her sugar goes low, let's catch her and let's give her something. So it's all that effort, all that waking up at 3 a.m. and running and, doing all of those things. It's incredible. People can do, sky is the limit. I mean, there's nothing that you can't do with diabetes. You pick what you enjoy. Maybe I like running. I have a friend who loves Latin dancing, so she does salsa and that's also a form of exercise. So definitely pick something you enjoy and stick with it.
I have a question regarding certain feelings within that you get when you have diabetes.
Yeah.
So it's very clear now. How do I feel when I get a cut on my knee, which is a very common issue with kids now? They fall down, they get hurt. If I dislocate my shoulder, I know the pain.
Yeah.
What is the feeling you get physically when you have diabetes?
Yeah. So the tricky thing, and we were discussing this before we started, it's a silent killer. And that sounds really like sinister, but it is, right? Because you don't really feel anything. Like I'm talking to you right now, and I'm in the conversation. I'm like, okay, what are they asking? What do I want to tell? What do I want to share with the viewers? So that's the kind of conversation. So I'm not really feeling anything at this point. The physical feeling comes in, I would say 2 times. One, so there are 2, diabetes is like a tightrope walk, You don't want to go too low and you don't want to go too high also with the blood sugar, I mean. So below 70, if your blood sugar goes, it's a hypoglycemia, which means it's a low sugar, which means, you need to have that glucose or that sugar or something to bring it back normal. Now, when a person has hypoglycemia, like I'll tell you my symptoms, I might start sweating. I might seem confused. It's possible that you may not even realize that I'm going through that at that point. If it escalates to such a level that, for some reason I'm shy or I haven't told you I have diabetes or whatever, and then I might even fall down. I might go unconscious. Worst case scenario, I might die if I don't treat that low. So that is the physical manifestation or the feeling of low sugar. On the contrary, if my sugar goes too high, like if it's 200, 600, then in that case, what my body will feel, I will feel mouth is dry. I want to drink water. And you remember all the symptoms that we spoke about when I was newly diagnosed. The same symptoms will come back. Mouth is dry, I want extra water, I want to go to the loo again and again, I want to urinate. Maybe the behavior change might happen, I might become more irritable. So those are the physical changes in terms of very low and very high. But in between that is where my goal is, I want to remain on that track. And so another feeling that that comes in is sometimes that burden, that I have to check my sugar. I mean, I have to calculate. There is like 10% of my brain is occupied by diabetes.
Yeah.
So maybe for somebody, 100% of their brain is free. They're writing the exam paper or they're, going to office or they're doing. But for me, 10, I have 90 available. Now out of 90, I can, give you some percent. 10% I have to block because. So before leaving the house today, I took my injection because my sugar was going slightly up and I like to be a little preventive and, quick acting. So I said, okay, I'll take my injection. Now in my mind, the back of my mind, I'm like, what's my sugar right now? Is it going low? Am I sweating because of the light? Am I sweating because my blood sugar is low? I'm fine. But, that also is something that diabetics have to deal with. That's an additional mental burden. So I guess those are the feelings that come in. And then sometimes it's just like, why do I have to deal with all this? I mean, I don't deserve it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said that sometimes the worst case scenario in diabetes is that the person can pass away.
Yeah.
So, pass away exactly what? If I have a heart attack, I know that I get a very stinging pain over here and I start to freeze and then I die.
Yeah.
So what is happening in diabetes that causes you to maybe reach that stage?
Yeah. So you can pass away, like you said correctly, due to multiple reasons. And I'm talking about the low and the high sugar. So in case of low blood sugar, your brain needs a certain amount of glucose to function. Not in the sense that I need to eat glucose daily. I don't. I actually don't eat sugar in any form. I eat a low carbohydrate diet. So, but despite that, even if I'm eating a high protein diet, my brain is being provided a little bit of glucose by the food and by everything. And, when my blood sugar is low, that glucose supply is getting cut off. So that's why I start glitching in a way, right? Like, it's like now we talk of mobiles that way, that a mobile is acting weird, it's glitching, it's stopping. That's the body also. Your brain needs that little bit of glucose, and we must not confuse it with the fact that everyone needs to eat glucose. No, we don't need to eat glucose. But your brain needs some. And so when that happens, there is a physiological reaction, right? There is something that's going on. The glucose supply is getting cut off. That's why I'm sweating. Body is giving me a signal that something's wrong. Do something, I know of people, I've not had this experience so far, touch wood, but I know of friends who have, they have collapsed. They have become unconscious. They've had seizures. They've been had to rush to the hospital. They've been, emergency steps have to be taken by their family. So these things can occur. And sometimes what happens is when your blood sugar is high, this can also happen that, it's called edema, if I'm not wrong, cerebral edema, where the brain swells up a bit. That is not normal. It's not supposed to happen. Sugar is also not supposed to be 700, So if that happens, your body starts reacting in all kinds of ways, and that could also lead to, unfortunately, untimely death for someone.
What I understand from what you just said is that the brain is the initial parameter for understanding how sugar has affected you, a high sugar level or a low sugar level, due to which other organs may start to malfunction. Am I right on that?
Correct, absolutely.
Speaking about parameters, I wanted to just understand, because when we were doing our research before this episode, we found that the parameters to diagnose whether what your blood sugar levels are different today than what they were in the 90s, and I'm sure they were different 100 years ago. And even WHO versus other organizations, they have set different parameters for different countries and different timelines. So what kind of messaging is the pharma industry trying to send out? Like, who is diabetic or not is going to be decided by parameters which keep changing. So what's your view on that?
Yeah. I mean, we have no option. We are going through our life, and maybe I think it's important to understand that everything is evolving, right? Like our understanding of our own bodies, the scientific community's understanding of what is the right sugar, and I know sometime back on WhatsApp, there was a thing that was circulating wherein somebody had mentioned 200 used to be okay, and now, 200 is highly diabetic. Fact is, and I'm just talking facts, that if your sugar is high over a prolonged time, and what is that number, some studies show that over 140, if it's on a prolonged basis for years together, 200, and many people have that. I used to be one of them. You will develop some complications. Now, because of the community, we see this in real time. We see people developing issue with the retina in their eye. It's called retinopathy. They develop kidney problem. I have a young friend, I think he started with kidney problem. He was diagnosed at 7, started kidney problem at 23 or 24 years of age. It's been several years now. He had to have a transplant. And why? Because sugar used to continuously be 300, 400. So, like, who to believe is really an important question. And I think first thing I would say is to believe yourself, to see, you don't have to believe everything you read. That's true, right? Because nowadays anything is told to us. And what are we supposed to believe? We know that, okay, there are people that are really taking care. There are some good doctors out there.
I find it very odd that the pharma industry or the world medical fraternity is unable to pinpoint a certain range and, not stick to that range.
Yeah.
That's odd. I mean, that's really odd is what I'm trying to get at over here.
Yeah, for sure.
There is something missing over here. And which brings me to the next question, that in ancient India, was there diabetes? Like, when did diabetes occur? When was the first case diagnosed? Yeah. Was it there in ancient India? And if at all, if it was there, what was the treatment and the cure then?
Yeah. So I don't remember the exact word, but like you say, madhumeh for diabetes. In our ancient scriptures, there is mention of and I mean, look at the advancement of our people even back then. Like hundreds of years ago, they knew. Now we know type 1, type 2, and other types are there. Gestation.
What's the word again you mentioned?
Ancient scriptures.
No, the word for
madhumeh. Madhumeh.
Okay.
Huh.
So that's mentioned in our ancient scripture.
That is mentioned, and they have also mentioned the types. Like back then they did not know type 1 and type 2. It was not, formally called that way. But they have mentioned that one type of diabetes is where a person is overweight and, it's probably due to excessive eating or a sedentary lifestyle like we all have. And one is a body is wasting. They have mentioned that in our scriptures as well. So we can now understand through our inference that the wasting part of it is probably type 1 because it's autoimmune and deficiency of insulin is there. In type 2, there is excessive insulin and the person is overweight and all. So that knowledge has been around for years. Now, exact, the pinpointing the numbers and for the benefit of the viewers, I'd like to say that fasting blood sugar needs to be under 100, between 70 to 100, and your post-meal blood sugars shouldn't go over 130 or 140 maximum.
That's as of today's parameters.
That's as of today, yes.
Right. But again, coming back to ancient India, like you mentioned that, they had the extensive knowledge of types of diabetes. They knew what diabetes is. They had a word for it. They had mentioned it in our scriptures. Was there any cure mentioned? Has your research helped you find anything that, what were they doing? How would they treat it?
Yes. So, to my understanding, like with the wasting of the, body, which was, we understand as type 1 diabetes, that was just about delaying the death because the death was going
Inevitable.
to happen. It was inevitable. They knew it because at the time they didn't know insulin was not present. Actually, insulin has only been discovered 100 years back. Frederick Banting, a Canadian scientist and doctor, and there was a team of 3-4 others that got a Nobel Prize for it, and they were able to extract insulin from the bodies of animals and do a lot of trials. First they did it on a dog, then eventually it got to such a point that people were able to be saved, and there were children who were dying in a ward, and 100% they would die, and it was only about can we keep them alive for a few more days by feeding them some salad or something, something that is not very high carbohydrate and just
Sugary.
Yeah, sugary. And that's how the life was being extended. But when they started going and injecting each child on the hospital ward, slowly you could see the children were, life was coming back in them. And over a period, you can see before and after photos on the net also if you search, like a skeleton in the body is before, without the insulin, because weight loss has happened, body muscles have gotten wasted, and afterwards the child has become normal and chubby like a normal child again. So that was a big breakthrough, that I think that is something that must be noted.
After this episode, I'm actually going to do a lot of research on what was ancient India doing about treatment of these kind of conditions, and I'm sure somewhere this cure was there and it's lost somewhere in the whole pipeline.
No, I totally, I understand. I mean, it's like $1 billion industry. People are really, and even when the cure comes, like for type 1 cure, it's still going to be out of reach for most of the people, they won't be able to afford getting that cure. So if and when, so when I was diagnosed, and this might be interesting for the podcast, my parents were told 5 years. Don't worry, the cure is coming 5 years.
The cure is coming in 5 years.
In 5 years.
And that was 30 years ago.
30 years ago. And every new person who is diagnosed is told something similar. So now it's a running joke, among all of us that, you were also told 5 years or 10 years. But if somebody clings on to that hope, it's, very disturbing for them. But I think we have moved on. We have accepted it.
There's a joke that's there. I mean, and again, I don't want to, step on anyone's toes here or the farmer, but there's a general joke that goes around that this patient was a cancer patient and he went to the doctor and he said, "Oh, you have 2 months to live." So he didn't pay his bills, so the doctor kept him alive for another 2 years. So, it's just a joke.
Yeah. No,
I don't want to,
Not at all. And I mean, we are the patients, right? It's our life on the line there. So, yeah.
I just want to end this podcast with your message for people regarding diabetes on prevention, treatment, speaking up, and at least letting people know that, hey, I have an issue. So what is your message to the people?
Yeah. I like to keep these, we've had a fabulous conversation and I want to thank you again for, having me. I've really enjoyed chatting with both of you. And I know that people tend to lose interest, at the end of a conversation. So I'll keep my message really short. And my message is actually just 2 words. It's take ownership.
Okay.
And why I say this, because, we, in our Indian culture, we've got like every family gathering that you go to, muh meetha karo is there, right? Either it's a birthday cake or it's a mithai, and people will say, "Thoda le lo, kya hota hai?" I've been through this for years together. We need to rethink that, right? We have to think about our health first, because it's our body and no one is in charge of our body. I used to, for the longest time, think that doctor will take care. It's not that. It's me. And it's just me. Like tomorrow, if I get some complication, of course I'll have a loving family and they've always been there. But we must take nothing for granted, not even our body. And for all the people whose pancreas are working and you're healthy and you're hearty and hale now, don't take it for granted. Take ownership of your health. Start looking at your lifestyle differently. Start doing things differently. It's not necessary to have mithai each time you're meeting your family member, right?
Yeah.
It's important to make memories, spend time, go out, go for a run as a family, make a healthy habit. Don't focus on the food alone, because food is really, it's addictive. It's in the modern world, sugar is the new cocaine, right? They say. So take care of your health, and really life is worth living if you're healthy and happy. No amount of money will replace your health. So you might be the richest person on the planet, but if you don't have health, I mean, look at Steve Jobs, he died of cancer, right?
Yeah.
Nothing can save
age.
you very early. So the only thing we have is our health, and that should be the top priority for us.
I think it's wonderful having you over, Nupur. Thank you for your time. And I think you've given a lot of insight into how one can still stand strong despite having various conditions, especially diabetes, for which there is no cure. And, you've been made to run from pillar to post to, first get diagnosed and then to be treated, and told very often that there are cures coming, but there is no cure.
Yeah.
So I think it's great I hope our viewers have got, the message that you've sent. And I think it's just wonderful as to, how openly you've talked about this. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for coming.